Welcome, dear listeners, to the shadows of another night. I am Elias Nocturne, keeper of the Unholy Chronicles and guardian of tales that dare not speak their names in daylight. Tonight's story found its way to me through unusual circumstances. The pages appeared on my doorstep in a box of blackened wood and pearl, accompanied by nothing but the faint whisper of a melody I could never quite grasp. As I transferred these words into our sacred tome, I noticed something rather disturbing. The ink seemed to flow of its own accord, forming patterns that reminded me of music notes. And in the silence of my study I could have sworn, but perhaps I should let you judge for yourselves. Draw close, dear listeners. Ensure your candles are lit, for darkness has a way of amplifying certain frequencies. And do pay attention to any unexpected melodies that might drift through your thoughts as I present to you, from the depths of these haunted pages, the echo of eternity. A tale of forbidden harmonies and the price we pay for hearing songs that were never meant for mortal ears. And should you find yourself humming along, do try to remember where the melody ends and your soul begins. I write these words not in the hope of absolution, but as a warning to those who might follow the path I have tread. For in the depths of human curiosity lies a darkness that, once awakened, can never truly be put to rest. My name is Theodore Blackwood, and I am, or perhaps was, a collector of rare antiquities, specializing in objects of occult significance. It was this very profession that led me to acquire the cursed music box that now seals my fate. The item came into my possession on a bitter November evening, when the wind howled through Boston's narrow streets like a chorus of the damned. I had received correspondence from a former colleague, Dr. James Whitmore, regarding an artifact of unusual providence that had come into his collection. The letter, written in his typically precise hand, bore evidence of uncharacteristic trembling, a detail I would later wish I had heeded more carefully. My dear Blackwood, it read, I write to you regarding a matter of utmost delicacy. I have recently acquired an item that defies all rational explanation, a music box, crafted in Vienna circa 1784, according to its previous owner. But I assure you, my friend, this is no ordinary timepiece. The mechanisms within produce harmonies that should not be possible from mere brass and steel. More disturbing still are the effects these melodies have had upon my household. My servants report hearing the box play at hours when it is safely locked away, and my dear wife Catherine has taken to wandering the halls at night, humming tunes she claims she cannot remember learning. The letter continued with detailed descriptions of the box's ornate exterior, carved from ebony and inlaid with mother of pearl in patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles. But it was the postscript that truly captured my attention. I beg you to take this cursed thing from my home. I shall accept any price you deem fair, though I warn you, some costs cannot be measured in mere currency. I should have recognized the desperation in those words. Instead, I saw only opportunity. 2 days later, I found myself at Whitmore's door, my breath forming ghostly patterns in the gaslit gloom. The mansion, once a proud example of federal architecture, had acquired an air of decay in the mere months since my last visit. Dead leaves skittered across the unkempt lawn, and several windows stood dark despite the early hour. Dr. Whitmore himself had changed as dramatically as his estate. The distinguished gentleman I had known for 15 years had become a haunted shell, his clothes hanging loose on his frame, his eyes sunken and rimmed with shadows that spoke of sleepless nights. He ushered me inside without ceremony, leading me directly to his study where the music box sat upon his desk. Even now, I struggle to describe the object adequately. The ebony surface seemed to absorb the lamplight rather than reflect it, creating an impression of infinite depth. The mother-of-pearl inlays did indeed appear to move, forming patterns that drew the eye into spirals and labyrinths before resolving themselves into more conventional decorative elements. But it was the mechanical components that truly set it apart. Gears and springs visible through crystal windows in its sides, arranged in configurations that violated every principle of clockwork I had studied. "Wind it," Whitmore urged, his voice barely above a whisper. "You must understand what you're purchasing." I reached for the key, a spidery thing of black metal that felt unnaturally cold to the touch. 3 turns, and the mechanism began to move. The music that emerged defied description. It was beautiful, yes, but beautiful in the way that the absence of light can be beautiful, a negative space that drew something vital from the listener. The melody seemed to operate on multiple levels simultaneously, with harmonies that twisted around each other like lovers or like serpents. I found myself swaying, my mind following the patterns deeper and deeper until Whitmore's hand on my shoulder broke the spell. "Enough," he said, closing the box with trembling fingers. "You see now why it must go. Name your price, Blackwood, but take it far from here." I paid him handsomely, though in retrospect he never touched the money I left on his desk. Within the hour, I was in my carriage, the music box secured in a velvet-lined case beside me. As we pulled away, I glimpsed Catherine Whitmore in an upper window, her pale face pressed against the glass, her lips moving in what might have been song. The first few days with my new acquisition passed in a fever of research and experimentation. I documented every detail of the box's construction, though my drawings never seemed to capture the true nature of its patterns. I recorded the music as best I could, but musical notation proved inadequate to transcribe melodies that seemed to exist in more dimensions than our common scales allow. It was on the 4th night that I first heard it play without being wound. I had been working late in my study, transcribing notes from earlier observations, when the sound began, distant at first, as if heard through walls or water, but growing gradually clearer. Following the melody, I found myself in my collection room, though I had no memory of walking there. The box sat open on its shelf, its mechanism in motion despite the key lying untouched beside it. The music was different this time. Where before it had been mesmerizing but ultimately mechanical, now it carried undertones of something organic, almost vocal. As I stood transfixed, I could have sworn I heard words woven into the harmony, though in no language I could identify. More disturbing still was the certainty that the words were meant for me alone. That was the beginning of my descent. Over the following weeks, the boundaries between silence and song began to blur. I heard the music everywhere, in the ticking of clocks, in the rhythm of hoofbeats on cobblestones, in the very beating of my heart. My servants whispered among themselves, though they fell silent whenever I approached. I dismissed them all, preferring solitude to their fearful glances. Sleep became both refuge and torment. In my dreams, I walked through vast halls filled with identical music boxes, each playing a different part of an endless symphony. Sometimes I glimpsed other figures in these dreams, Catherine Whitmore among them, still singing her silent songs, and others I didn't recognize but somehow knew were previous owners of the box. They reached for me with graceful, desperate gestures, their mouths moving in warnings I couldn't quite hear. I wrote to Whitmore several times during this period, seeking answers about the box's history, but my letters went unanswered. Finally, after nearly a month of silence, I received word that both he and Catherine had been committed to an asylum outside the city. The official diagnosis was shared musical hysteria, a malady I had never encountered in all my years of medical reading. It was around this time that I began to notice the changes in my reflection. Nothing dramatic at first, a pallor to the skin perhaps, a darkening around the eyes that mirrored Whitmore's haunted appearance. But as the weeks wore on, the alterations became more pronounced. My hair began to grey, not in the usual pattern of aging, but in swirling designs that echoed the box's inlaid patterns. The very structure of my face seemed to shift, features rearranging themselves in subtle ways that only I could perceive. I stopped leaving the house entirely, having my necessities delivered and left at the door. My only company was the music, which by now played constantly, though whether from the box itself or merely in my mind, I could no longer determine. I filled notebook after notebook with increasingly fractured observations, my handwriting evolving into spiral patterns that matched the melodies I heard. It was in one of these notebooks that I first noticed the symbols appearing between my words, characters in an alphabet I had never seen but could somehow read. They spoke of the box's true origin, of the beings who had crafted it as a bridge between their realm of pure sound and our world of solid matter. They warned of the price of knowledge and the danger of music that was never meant for human ears. I should have destroyed the box then, should have smashed it to pieces or buried it where none would ever find it. Instead, I listened harder, convinced that if I could just understand the message hidden in its melodies, I might transcend the limitations of my mortal form. The music promised transformation after all, though it never specified into what. Last night, I finally heard the full symphony, all the parts coming together in a crescendo that shook the very foundations of reality. As the music reached its peak, I saw them, the box's true creators, beings of pure vibration and infinite harmony. They were beautiful and terrible, their forms constantly shifting like the patterns in the mother of pearl, their voices the source of all music and all madness. They offered me a choice: join their eternal chorus or remain forever caught between worlds, neither fully human nor fully transformed. In my arrogance, I chose transformation. Only as the change began did I realize my error, that what I saw as transcendence was merely a different form of imprisonment. I write these words now with hands that are barely recognizable as human, my flesh taking on the texture and sheen of ebony and pearl. The music flows through me constantly, using my body as another instrument in its endless performance. Soon, I know, the transformation will be complete, and Theodore Blackwood will exist only as a movement in the greater symphony. The box sits before me as I write, innocent in appearance despite all it has wrought. Already I can feel my consciousness fragmenting, becoming one with the melodies that gave it birth. With my last moments of clarity, I offer this warning. If you should ever encounter a music box of ebony and pearl, with mechanisms that defy explanation and music that calls to something deep within your soul, do not listen to its song. For the price of impossible music is nothing less than your very humanity. And if, dear reader, you begin to hear melodies in the silence between these words, if you find yourself humming tunes you never learned, then I fear it is already too late. For the symphony knows no bounds of space or time, and these very words may serve as conductors for its eternal performance. Listen closely now. Can you hear it beginning? If you enjoyed this tale of musical horror, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to join our community of horror enthusiasts at Unholy Tales. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let us know what other dark stories you'd like to hear. Remember, some songs are better left unsung.